I drove past the cemetery where my late husband is buried and saw my son's car there. He never visits his father's grave. Curious, I parked and walked between the headstones. I found him standing at a strange grave, whispering and crying. My heart almost stopped when I heard what he was saying. Don't forget to subscribe to Granny's Voice and comment where you're watching from. The November rain had just stopped when I drove past Greenfield Cemetery. The same path I'd taken every week for the past 4 years. Every Sunday morning without fail, I brought fresh roses to Michael's grave. My late husband earned that much, even if our 42 years together had more silence than words. The oak trees around the cemetery's stone walls were bare now, and I was thinking about which flowers I'd bring next week when I noticed it. My son's red Toyota truck parked near the south entrance. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. David never came to his father's grave. Not on the day we buried Michael, not on his birthday, not even when I begged him to come with me. "I deal with it my own way, Ma," he'd said many times. His face hard with something I'd always thought was pain too deep to share. Michael's grave was on the north side under the big pine tree. The south entrance led to the newer area. Graves bought within the last 5 years. Why was David here? I slowed down, my heart beating faster. At 70 years old, I'd learned to listen to my feelings. Something felt wrong. My son, who said he couldn't handle visiting graves, was here on a quiet Sunday morning. His truck was empty, the engine cool when I carefully touched it after parking 3 rows away. I walked through the entrance, staying near the bushes. The cemetery was empty except for a worker fixing a fence far away. My brown shoes made quiet sounds on the wet grass as I walked deeper into the newer area, looking at the rows of stones. Then I saw him. David stood in front of a white marble stone. His big body bent forward, shoulders moving up and down. Even from far away, I could see he was crying hard. My son, who didn't cry at his father's funeral, who kept his feelings locked up so tight that his wife Emma said he was like a wall, was crying like his heart was broken. I hid behind a tall stone with an angel on top. My heart was pounding in my chest. This wasn't sadness for his father. This was something else. Something painful and deep. "I'm so sorry." David's voice came to me on the wind, broken and rough. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I should have been stronger. I should have said no to them. I should have kept you safe. Sarah." I put my hand on the cold stone, trying to stay steady. "Who was Sarah?" "It's been 8 months," he said, his voice shaking. 8 months since you left, and I still feel like I can't breathe right. Emma thinks I'm working extra hours. Ma thinks I'm at the store. Nobody knows I come here 3 times a week, talking to stone like it can make you come back." My mind was racing. 8 months ago was March. David had been strange that spring, I remembered. Far away. Emma had said he was worried about his job, but I'd felt something deeper. A mother knows. Your parents destroyed everything. The anger in David's voice made me jump. Victor Harris with his money and his warnings and his perfect son-in-law already chosen. He made sure I was nothing. Just some poor guy with a high school degree and big dreams. Not good enough for his daughter. Not worthy of the Harris name. Harris. The name hit me hard. Victor Harris owned most of Riverside County, the factories, the stores, the new library building. He knew every important person, had meetings with mayors and judges, and his daughter. "I heard about the funeral," David whispered. "I wanted to be there, but how could I? Your husband was there. James Cooper, the man your parents chose for you, the man you married instead of me. Everyone said what a good husband he was, standing there in his expensive suit, looking sad. Did they know? Did anyone know how unhappy you were?" I moved closer, hiding behind stones like a spy in a movie. But this was real. This was my son, crying for a woman I'd never heard him talk about, speaking of a past I knew nothing about. David fell to his knees in the wet grass and I heard him cry harder. "I met him, your son. I saw him at the funeral from far away. Sarah, he has your smile, your beautiful smile, and he's 7 years old, exactly the age he'd be if his voice broke completely." The world seemed to spin. 7-year-old son. The timeline crashed into my mind hard and fast. David had dated someone seriously about 8 years ago before Emma. He'd been so sad when it ended, stayed in his apartment for weeks, got very thin. When he finally came out, he wouldn't talk about it. Said only that it didn't work out and we should never mention it again. Within 2 years, he'd married Emma, a nice girl from a nice family. A marriage that looked right but had always felt empty to me. They won't let me near him, David said, his voice getting hard. Victor made sure of that. Even with you gone, even with James Cooper acting like the sad husband, your father controls everything. He's got my son Sarah, our son. And I can't do anything about it because I have no papers, no legal rights, nothing but this hole in my chest where my heart used to be. A sound came from my throat. Half cry, half gasp. David's head turned fast. For a terrible moment, our eyes met across the graves. His face went white, then red, then white again. I stepped out from behind the stone, my legs shaking. David, I was bringing flowers to your father and I saw your truck. How long have you been there? His voice was sharp, scared, not like the broken whisper from before. Long enough. My voice was surprisingly steady. Long enough to know you have a son. My grandson. Long enough to know that Sarah has been dead for 8 months. Long enough to know Victor Harris took something precious from you. David's face crumpled. He looked suddenly young, like the boy he'd been at 18, before life had taught him to hide everything behind a wall. Please, he said. Please, Ma, just don't. But I couldn't stop. 25 years working at the post office had trained me to notice details, to put together stories from small pieces. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you fight for him? With what? The fear in his voice cut through me. Victor Harris said he'd destroy me if I came near Sarah. He had people follow me. He made sure I lost my job at Miller's Construction. He told every company in 2 counties not to hire me. That's why I work in Grayson now, 70 miles away. The only place he can't. And Sarah, she begged me to stay away. Ma, she said her father would make both our lives terrible. That she'd married James Cooper for safety, for peace. She said the baby was James's even though I knew. He knew. But now she's gone. I said softly. And your son, Daniel. His voice broke on the name. She named him Daniel. James Cooper is raising him like he's his own. Victor Harris is teaching him to be the next family leader. And I'm nobody. Just a truck driver making $60,000 a year with no proof the child is mine. No money for lawyers who could fight Harris's legal team. And a wife who doesn't even know this child exists. The pieces were coming together fast. Emma doesn't know. How could I tell her? We were already planning our wedding when I found out Sarah had a baby. I saw it in the newspaper. James and Sarah Cooper welcomed their son, Daniel. The dates, God, Ma, the dates matched perfectly with when Sarah and I were together. But she'd married James 5 months into being pregnant. Quick, small wedding. The newspaper said it was a private family event. I moved closer, my hand reaching for my son. David, if this child is yours, if he laughed bitterly. I know he's mine. Feel it here. He pressed his hand against his chest. But feelings aren't proof. Victor Harris made sure James Cooper's name is on the birth papers. Made sure Sarah signed every document saying James was the father. Made sure I was erased completely. DNA testing, I said. That's proof that can't be argued. Which means I need to see the child, David said. Which means I need to file papers with the court, which means I need a lawyer, which costs money I don't have. Not the kind of money needed to fight Harris's lawyers. They'd bury me in papers and delays. And even if I somehow proved I was the father, who do you think the courts would choose? A truck driver making $60,000 a year or one of the richest, most powerful families in the state? The wind picked up, blowing leaves across the graves. I looked at the stone in front of us. Sarah Harris, beloved daughter, loving mother, 1989-2025. Until we meet again. She'd been only 36, a year younger than David. How did she die? Car crash. David's voice was empty. She hit a tree on Highway 12 late at night. The police report said she was going too fast on a wet road. But Sarah was the most careful driver I ever knew. She never drove fast, never took chances, and that part of the road, she'd driven it a million times. A cold feeling ran through me that had nothing to do with the November air. You think it wasn't an accident? I think Sarah was unhappy. I think she'd been stuck in a marriage with no love for 7 years. I think Victor Harris controls everything and everyone around him. And I think asking questions about Sarah's death would be very, very dangerous. The fear in his voice was real. This wasn't just sadness. This was terror. My son was afraid of Victor Harris. Really afraid. David, I said carefully, if this little boy is your son, our family, we can't just leave him. We can't let fear, it's not just fear, Ma. He grabbed my arms, holding tight. Listen to me. 3 weeks after Sarah died, I got a phone call. No number showed up. A man's voice said, David Miller, you will not ask questions about the Cooper family. You will not try to contact the child. You will not talk to newspapers. If you do, bad things happen, jobs end, families get hurt. Then he hung up. My blood went cold. That's a threat. That's against the law. It can't be traced and it's real. The next day, someone went into my truck. Nothing was taken, but every family photo I kept in there, photos with you, with Dad, with Emma's family, they were spread across the seats. Message. We know who you love. We can reach them. I thought of my small house on Pine Street. The house Michael and I had bought 35 years ago. The house where I lived alone now. Where I felt safe doing my daily routine of post office work and book club meetings and shopping every Tuesday. That feeling of safety broke like glass. So you've done nothing, I said. For 8 months, you've cried in secret and done nothing. What choice did I have? The pain in his voice was terrible. Go against Victor Harris and risk everything. Risk you. Risk Emma even if our marriage isn't great. Harris has judges working for him. Police chiefs, town council members. He's untouchable. No one is untouchable, I said, surprised by the strength in my own voice. And that little boy, Daniel, he's family. He deserves to know his real father. He deserves better than being raised by people who threatened and controlled his mother, who might have, I couldn't finish. David's eyes met mine, and I saw something change in them. Hope maybe, or understanding. Ma, you don't know what you're saying. These aren't people you fight. These are people who destroy anyone in their way. Then we'll be very careful, I said. We'll be smart about this, but I'm not walking away from my grandson. The worker fixing the fence had moved closer, the sound breaking into our private moment. David looked around nervously, then pulled me away from Sarah's grave toward a quieter area behind a tool shed. If we do this, he said, his voice low and urgent, we can't tell Emma. Not yet. She'd never understand. She'd think I cheated on her, or worse, that I've been lying our whole marriage. Haven't you been? The question came out harder than I meant. Yes, his truth was harsh. But if she finds out before we have a plan, before we have something real, she'll leave me. And Harris could use a divorce, use family problems to prove I'm not fit to be a father. He was right and I hated it. So we look quietly. We gather information. We find proof. We'd need Sarah's hospital records from when she was pregnant. We'd need to show proof that she and I were together. We'd need to prove that she was forced to marry James. And then we'd need money, real money, for lawyers who aren't afraid of Victor Harris. One step at a time, I said, my mind already working. 25 years at the post office had taught me how to find information, how to follow paper trails, how to be patient and careful. First, we need to know everything about Sarah's life in the last 8 years. Who her doctors were, who her friends were, whether she left any proof of her real feelings. Her friend Lisa, David said suddenly. Lisa Chin. She and Sarah were best friends since college. She might know something. Then we start with Lisa. I pulled out my phone making a note. What else? Think, David. What can we use? Sarah's mother died when she was 10, he said slowly, thinking hard. She was never close to her father after that. She used to talk about her mother's things being stored in a locked room at the Harris house. Personal items, diaries. Victor never let her see them. He said it was too sad. But Sarah thought what? That there were things in there he didn't want her to see. Things about the family, about her mother's death. Another strange death in the Harris family. The pattern was forming, ugly and clear. We need to get into that room. The house has cameras, David said. Guards at night, alarms everywhere. It's like a fortress. Fortresses have weak spots, I said. People have routines. Security has gaps. There's always a way. David stared at me like he'd never seen me before. Ma, who are you right now? I smiled, though it wasn't funny. I'm a grandmother who just found out she has a 7-year-old grandson being raised by people who scare anyone who challenges them. I'm a mother who's watched her son suffer alone for 8 years. I'm a woman who spent her whole life being quiet and careful and proper. And I'm tired of it. Sometimes David being nice isn't enough. He was quiet for a long time, looking at my face. Then slowly he nodded. "'Kay, but we have to be careful. If Harris finds out we're looking, then we don't let him find out," I said simply. "We're quiet. We're smart. And we don't give up until Daniel knows his real father." As we walked back toward our cars, I felt something new stirring in my chest. Purpose, strength, maybe even anger that felt right. Victor Harris had spent years controlling lives, deciding outcomes, crushing anyone who stood in his way. He'd never faced a 70-year-old grandmother with nothing to lose and everything to fight for. The game was starting, whether he knew it yet or not, and I planned to win. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with a fresh notebook and a cup of coffee that had gone cold 2 hours ago. Sunlight came through the yellow curtains Michael's aunt had made, lighting up the list I'd been building since 4 in the morning. Lisa Chen was my first goal, but finding her phone number was harder than I thought. Internet searches showed 4 Lisa Chen in the area, none with information that matched. Someone who'd been Sarah's college friend. I was reaching for my phone to call David when it rang. Emma's name showed on the screen. "Barbara, hi." My daughter-in-law's voice was tight, fake happy. "I hope I'm not calling too early." "Not at all, dear. I've been up for hours. Listen, I wanted to invite you for dinner tonight. Just family. David's been so far away lately, and I thought maybe having you there would help him relax. You know how he is. He won't talk to me, but sometimes he opens up around you." Felt guilty. Emma had no idea why her husband was far away, and I was now helping keep his secret. "Tonight might be hard. I have a book club meeting that could run late. Tomorrow then." There was worry in her voice. "Please, Barbara. Something's wrong with David, and I don't know how to reach him. He disappears for hours, says he's working, but his boss called last week looking for him. He's lying to me and I need to know why." My hand tightened on the phone. Emma was already wondering, already asking questions. She pushed too hard. If she found the truth before we had a plan, everything could fall apart. "Let me talk to him," I said carefully. "Sometimes men just need space to work through things." "It's been 8 months of space," Emma said sharply. Then softer, "I'm sorry. I'm just worried. He's not himself. Because he's mourning a woman he loved and a son he can't claim," I thought. But I said, "I'll come tomorrow, 6 o'clock. After she hung up, I stared at my notebook. The dinner was a problem but also a chance. I needed to watch David and Emma together. See how much danger we were in of her finding the truth too soon. My phone buzzed with a text from David. "Found Lisa's number. She agreed to meet you today. 1 o'clock, Riverside Cafe. Go alone. She's scared." An hour later, I was parked outside the cafe, watching a thin woman with black hair walk nervously near the door. She looked about 38, dressed nicely in black pants and a white shirt, checking her phone every few seconds. When I walked up, her eyes looked around the parking lot before. She shook my hand. "Mrs. Miller. Call me Barbara." I shook her hand, noticing her fingers shaking. "Thank you for meeting me." Inside, we picked a corner table far from other people. Lisa ordered tea she didn't drink, her fingers tearing a napkin into pieces. "David said you know about Sarah and Daniel," she whispered. I shouldn't be talking to you. If Victor finds out, how would he find out? Kept my voice calm, kind. This is just two women having tea. Victor has people everywhere. Lisa's eyes were wide, with real fear. After Sarah died, he had people ask all her friends questions. They asked about her marriage, her feelings, whether she'd been talking to anyone from her past. It was supposed to be routine, getting information for the family, but it felt like being questioned by police. Did you tell them about David? No. Just shook. Sarah made me promise never to say his name to anyone. She said it would put him in danger. She said her father had already destroyed David's job once and would do worse if he knew they'd talked again. My heart beat faster. They talked again. When? Lisa looked around again, then leaned closer. About 2 years before she died. It was an accident. They ran into each other at a hotel in Springfield. David was there for some work meeting. Sarah was with James at a business dinner. They talked for maybe 15 minutes in the hotel restaurant, but it was enough. She called me that night crying, saying seeing him again had broken something inside her. Did they meet again? 3 times. Once for lunch, once for a walk in a park in Westfield, somewhere far from Riverside where no one would know her. She told him the truth about Daniel. She showed him pictures. David wanted to fight for the child in court, but Sarah begged him not to. She said Victor would bury him in legal bills and destroy what was left of his life. She said the only way Daniel would ever be safe was if David stayed away. The coffee in my stomach felt sour. Safe from what? Lisa's voice dropped to almost a whisper. Sarah was terrified of her father. She never said it directly, but I got the feeling, Barbara, I think Victor killed her mother. I think Sarah knew or thought so, and that's why she was so afraid. The cafe suddenly felt too hot, too small. Why would he kill his own wife? Because she wanted to leave him. Sarah told me once that her mother had talked to a lawyer about divorce when Sarah was 9. The papers were being written. The agreement was being worked out. Her mother was going to take Sarah and move to Oregon, start fresh. Then she got sick, bad cancer. Found stage 4 almost overnight. Dead within 2 months. Sarah said her mother had just had a full checkup the month before, completely healthy, then suddenly dying. You think he poisoned her? I think Victor Harris is a man who doesn't accept losing. And I think Sarah figured that out too late. Lisa's hands were shaking badly now. The night before Sarah died, she called me. It was late, maybe midnight. She sounded strange, not drunk, but different somehow. She said, Lisa, if anything happens to me, promise you'll make sure Daniel knows the truth about his father someday. Promise me David won't be forgotten. I thought she was being dramatic. She'd been sad since Daniel started school, talking about how trapped she felt. I told her to get some sleep, that we'd talk in the morning, but there was no morning. By 2 o'clock the next day, she was dead. The meaning crashed over me like a wave. You think Victor killed Sarah too? I think Sarah told him she wanted to leave James. I think she told her father she wanted a divorce, that she was going to tell Daniel the truth about David. And I think Victor solved the problem the way he always does, by getting rid of it. Lisa's eyes filled with tears. But I can't prove any of it. The police said it was an accident. The medical report showed nothing wrong. James Cooper acted like the sad husband perfectly. And Victor got Daniel without a single legal fight because he'd made sure David Miller legally didn't exist. Where are Sarah's personal things? Yes. Her computer, her diaries, her phone. Victor took everything from her house the day after the funeral. He said he was keeping it for Daniel, protecting his mother's memory. But James told people at the service that Victor had already moved most of Sarah's things to the house weeks before her death. Like he was getting ready. A new secret, uglier than the last. Victor Harris hadn't just kept Sarah and David apart. He'd possibly killed his own wife and daughter to keep control. And now he had Daniel, shaping a 7-year-old child to be like him. Lisa, would you be willing to write a statement about what Sarah told you? About David being Daniel's father? Fear flashed across her face. And make myself Victor's next target. I have a husband, Barbara. Have 3 kids. I can't put them in danger. Then help me another way. Where would Sarah have hidden something she didn't want Victor to find? Evidence, papers, proof of Daniel's real father. Lisa bit her lip, thinking. There was one place, her mother's art room. It's in a separate building on the Harris property away from the main house. Sarah used to go there sometimes when her father was away traveling. She said it was the only place on the land where she felt close to her mother, where she could breathe. Victor never goes there. I think it reminds him of his wife too much. How would I get inside? Can't. The property is locked up tight. There's a gate with security, cameras everywhere, guards walking around at night. You'd need codes, keys, and invitation. It's impossible. I smiled, though it wasn't happy. There's always a way. Does Victor ever leave the property for long periods? He's on the board for 2 hospitals and 3 charities. He goes to meetings, flies to conferences. But even when he's gone, James Cooper lives in the main house with Daniel. And James is loyal to Victor, completely under his control. What about house workers? Sarah must have had help with Daniel. Lisa's eyes got slightly bigger. Martha Wells. She was Daniel's babysitter from when he was born until Sarah died. Victor fired her right after the funeral. Said Daniel didn't need a babysitter anymore. That he'd arranged for teachers and helpers. But Martha loved Sarah. She was more than staff. She was like family. Sarah trusted her with everything. Do you know where Martha is now? She moved back to her family in Maine, I think, or maybe Vermont. I remember Sarah saying Martha came from a small town up north, somewhere quiet. A new lead, but also a new problem. Finding a woman who'd left the state, who might not want to talk, who could also be too scared of Victor to help. But I had to try. I thanked Lisa and walked back to my car, my mind going through the information. As I reached for my door, I noticed something under the windshield wiper. Plain white envelope, no writing. Inside was a single sheet of paper with typed words. Some questions are better left unasked. Some secrets should stay buried. This is your only warning. My hands didn't shake as I read it. Instead, a cold clearness came over me. Someone had followed me to the cafe. Someone had watched me meet with Lisa. Someone wanted me scared enough to stop asking questions, which meant we were onto something real. I pulled out my phone and texted David. They know. We need to move faster. His answer came 30 seconds later. Ma, please walk away. Too dangerous. Type back. I'm going to Maine to find Martha Wells. Tell Emma I'm visiting my old friend Ruth for a few days. But I was already starting the car. 20 minutes later, I was home throwing clothes into a bag when someone knocked hard on my front door. Through the little window, I saw David. His face red with anger and fear. I let him in and he immediately grabbed my shoulders. You can't do this. That note is a direct threat. They're watching you now. If you go to Maine, if you find Martha, they'll know. They'll hurt you to get to me, to scare us into silence. Then we'll be careful, I said, pulling away to keep packing. David, we have 3 days before I'm supposed to have dinner with you and Emma. That's 3 days to find something, anything that gives us power. After that, Emma's going to want answers you can't give her. And this whole thing might blow up. Better it blows up than you end up like Sarah. The words hung between us, scary and real. But I'd already made my choice. I'm 70 years old. I've lived a careful, quiet, safe life. I raised you, took care of your father, worked my post office job, did everything right and proper and expected. And where has it gotten me? To a place where my only grandson is being raised by people who might be killers, and my son is too afraid to claim his own child. My voice was firm, no argument allowed. You ask me who I am now. I'm someone who's done being afraid. I'm going to Maine. I'm going to find Martha Wells. And I'm going to get the information we need to prove Daniel is yours, and that Victor Harris is exactly what we think he is. A man who kills people who get in his way. David stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact second he realized he couldn't stop me. Then I'm coming with you. No, you need to stay here. Keep your routine. Keep Emma from getting suspicious. I need you to find everything you can about Victor's business deals, his partners, Anyone who might have a complaint or inside information. I need you to make a timeline of Sarah's last year. Everywhere she went, everyone she saw. Can you do that? He nodded slowly, not wanting to. What if something happens to you? Then you'll have to finish this without me. Closed my bag. But nothing's going to happen. I'm just a harmless old woman visiting an old friend. Who would think anything of me? As I drove north on Highway 91 an hour later, my mirror clear of anyone following, I thought about that question again. Who would think anything of me? Victor Harris would, apparently, because someone had left that note. Someone was already watching, which meant the real game was just starting, and I just made myself a player Victor couldn't ignore. The only question was whether I'd guessed wrong about how mean he was willing to be. I'd know the answer soon enough. The address I'd found for Martha Wells led me to an old farmhouse outside Portland, Maine, 5 hours north of Riverside. The house sat at the end of a dirt road, surrounded by pine trees getting dark in the late afternoon light. Smoke came from the chimney and an old blue car sat in the driveway. I'd called ahead using a number from an online search, saying I was a friend of Sarah's who wanted to share memories. The woman who answered had been careful but finally agreed to meet. Martha Wells opened the door before I could knock. She was in her 50s with gray hair pulled back and eyes that had seen too much sadness. Mrs. Miller. Her voice was careful. "Thank you for seeing me," I said. "I know this is strange." She looked at me for a long moment, then stepped aside. "Come in. Coffee's ready." The farmhouse inside was simple but warm. Handmade blankets, family photos on the shelf, a wood stove giving heat. Martha poured 2 cups of coffee and pointed to an old couch. "You said you were Sarah's friend, but I never saw you at the house, and I knew all her friends. No point in lying. I'm David Miller's mother. Sarah's, the man she loved before James Cooper." Martha's cup stopped halfway to her mouth. Then slowly she put it down. "David. She talked about him sometimes when Mr. Harris wasn't around. She said he was the only man she ever really loved." Her eyes got narrow. "Why are you here?" "Because my grandson is being raised by people who scared his mother. Because David has a right to his son. And because I think Victor Harris killed Sarah just like he killed his wife." I expected shock, anger, denial. Instead, Martha simply nodded. "So you know, the truth hit me like being punched. You believe he killed her?" "I know he did." Martha's voice was flat, tired. "Sarah told me 4 days before she died. She came to my room at the house. It was late past 11. She was terrified. She said her father had given her a choice. Stay married to James and raise Daniel according to Victor's plan, or lose her son completely. He'd threatened to have her called an unfit mother. Said he had doctors who'd say she was mentally sick, even suicidal. He'd made up a fake history of her being depressed. Had records changed, medicine bottles put under her name for drugs she'd never taken. That's fraud. That's lying to courts. That's power." Martha's hands shook as she picked up her coffee again. "Victor Harris owns people, judges, doctors, police. Sarah knew if she fought him in court, she'd lose Daniel anyway and probably end up locked in a hospital. So she made a different plan. She told me she was going to run. She'd been secretly moving money to a hidden account for months. Small amounts James wouldn't notice. She had a friend in Canada who'd offered her a place to stay. She was going to take Daniel and disappear. My heart was racing. Did she tell Victor? She must have, because 3 days later she was dead." Martha's voice cracked. "The police said she drove too fast on a wet road, but Sarah drove that road every day. She knew every turn, every bump, and the medical report." She stopped, pressing her lips together. "What about the medical report?" "It showed she had sleeping pills in her body. The police decided she'd been taking medicine for worry and it made her drive badly. But Sarah didn't take medicine. She was afraid of it, afraid of being drugged and controlled. I'd bet my life those pills were forced into her or put in her food." "Did you tell the police what you thought?" Martha laughed bitterly. "The police chief plays golf with Victor Harris every week. The medical examiner's office got a $2 million gift from the Harris Foundation last year. Who was I going to tell? And what proof did I have except a late-night talk and my gut feeling? But you're willing to tell me. Because you're David's mother. Because Daniel deserves to know his real father. And because she stood quickly, walking to a bookshelf in the corner. She pulled down a thick photo book and brought it back, flipping through pages until she found what she wanted. "'Cause Sarah gave me this." She handed me a photograph. It showed Sarah holding a tiny newborn baby, her face happy, despite being tired. Standing next to her, his hand on her shoulder, was David. The similarity was clear. The same dark hair, the same face shape, the same eyes looking at the camera with joy and fear mixed together. When was this taken? My voice was barely there. The day after Daniel was born. James was away on a trip. Convenient timing arranged by Victor, I'm sure. David drove down from Grayson at 2 in the morning after I called him. Sarah had asked me to. She wanted him to meet his son, wanted proof that Daniel was. They had maybe 3 hours together before James was supposed to come back. David held that baby like he was the most precious thing in the world. Sarah cried the whole time. Then he had to leave. And Sarah had to pretend she'd spent the night alone with just me for help. I stared at the photo, remembering every detail. This is proof. This shows David was there. That Sarah wanted him involved. It's proof of a visit, nothing more. It doesn't prove he's the father in a legal way. But Sarah knew that, which is why she gave me something else. Martha reached into her pocket and pulled out a small envelope. She gave me this the night she told me she was planning to run. She said, "If anything happens to me, find David Miller and give him this. Tell him Daniel needs to know the truth." My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a handwritten letter in beautiful writing. "David, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to stand up to my father 8 years ago. Sorry I let him bully me into marrying James. I'm sorry I took 7 years of our son's life from you. Daniel is yours. He has your eyes, your laugh, your kind heart. Every time I look at him, I see the man I should have married, the life we should have had. I've put a piece of his hair from his first haircut in this envelope. If you ever need to prove you're his father, this will help with DNA testing. My father is a monster. I've finally admitted that to myself. He killed my mother when she tried to leave him, and he'll kill me too if I try to take Daniel away. But I have to try. I have to save our son from becoming another Victor Harris. If you're reading this, it means I failed. Means my father won. Please don't let him win forever. Fight for Daniel. Love him. Tell him his mother loved him more than anything. Tell him she tried. Forever yours, Sarah." Tears made everything blurry. The envelope also had a small plastic bag with a piece of baby hair. Dark and soft. Carefully saved. "DNA proof," I whispered. "This is what we need. It's also dangerous if Victor finds out it exists," Martha said quietly. Sarah made me promise to keep it hidden until I could safely give it to David. That's why I moved back here, why I've stayed off the internet, why I haven't contacted anyone from the house. Victor has people looking for anything Sarah might have left behind. He knows she was planning something. I think that's why he acted when he did. How did you escape his attention? I didn't completely. 3 weeks after I moved back here, someone broke into my house while I was at the store. Nothing was taken, but my bedroom had been searched. Drawers opened, mattress moved, closet emptied. Message: "We know where you are. We're watching." I've kept Sarah's letter and the photo at my sister's house in New Hampshire ever since. Only brought them back today because you were coming. A new problem. Victor's reach went even to quiet Maine. We weren't safe anywhere. But we had proof now. Real proof that could show David was the father and possibly connect Victor to murder. Need to get this to David right away, I said. And we need to file for a DNA test before Victor realizes we have the hair. That will take a lawyer. A good one who's not afraid of the Harris name. No. I'd been thinking about this problem since leaving Riverside. There's a firm in Boston, Anderson and White. They work with family law and custody fights. They helped a post office co-worker's son in a hard case last year. I'll call them tonight. Martha walked me to the door as evening shadows grew across the land. Mrs. Miller, be careful. Victor doesn't just destroy jobs and names. People who cross him have accidents, get suddenly sick, disappear. Sarah was his own daughter and he killed her without hesitation. You're a stranger to him, which makes you even less important. I'm also a 70-year-old grandmother, I said. Maybe he'll think I'm not a threat. Don't count on it. Martha waited, then added, there's something else. The day before Sarah died, I heard her on the phone. She was in the garden, thought she was alone. She was talking to someone about papers, something about proof of what he did to Mother and records that can't be changed. She said she'd hidden copies somewhere safe, somewhere Victor would never think to look. I don't know what papers she meant or where she hid them, but if you can find them, they might prove he killed his wife. The pieces were connecting in a scary way. Where would Sarah hide something she didn't want found? The art room, Martha said right away. Her mother's old studio. It's the only place on the property Victor won't enter. He can't handle it. Too many memories, I guess. Even guilt might bother him there. How would I get inside? You can't, not while Victor's alive and watching. She stopped, biting her lip. But there's a groundskeeper, Tom Reed. He's worked on the property for 25 years. He was loyal to Sarah's mother, and he hated seeing what Victor did to Sarah. He has keys to the art room. If you could convince him to help, how do I find him? He lives in a cottage on the property, but he drinks at Riley's bar in Riverside every Thursday night, 8 o'clock, regular as a clock. He's in his 50s, gray hair, always wears a Yankees cap. I memorized the details, already planning. It was Sunday evening. I had 4 days to get back to Riverside, call the lawyers, and find Tom Reed before my dinner with David and Emma. The drive back south felt longer than the trip up. Sarah's letter sat in my purse, the words burning through the leather. A young woman trapped and scared, fighting the only way she could. Now, her son was in the hands of her killer, being shaped into something Sarah had died trying to stop. I called David from a rest area. I have proof, I said without waiting. Sarah's letter, a hair sample for DNA testing, and a witness who will say she told her about her father's threats. The relief in his voice was clear. Ma, that's amazing. That's enough to, it's not enough yet, I stopped him. We need the papers. Sarah hid proof about Victor killing his wife. That's what will destroy him completely, what will make sure he can never threaten us or Daniel again. How do we get papers from inside the property? I'm working on that. But David, there's something you need to know. Sarah wrote that letter knowing she was going to die. She believed her father would kill her if she tried to take Daniel and run. She was right. The silence on the other end went on too long. Finally, David said, his voice thick with feeling, I could have saved her if I'd fought harder 8 years ago. If I'd refused to let Victor scare me, then you'd probably be dead too, I said bluntly. Victor Harris gets rid of threats. You staying alive, staying free, that was Sarah's choice. She wanted you safe so you could eventually fight for Daniel. Don't dishonor what she did by drowning in guilt. Honor it by winning. Ma, when did you become so what? So fierce. I smiled, though it wasn't happy, at my reflection in the window. When someone threatened my family. Now listen carefully. Tomorrow morning I'm meeting with Anderson and White in Boston. I need you to get me every paper you have showing your relationship with Sarah. Emails, photos, receipts from your Westfield meetings, anything. I also need you to write a detailed statement about your relationship timeline, including the hotel where you met again. Can you do that without Emma knowing? I'll figure it out. But Ma, even with Sarah's letter and the DNA proof, Victor will fight this with everything he has. The custody battle could take years. Only if we play by normal rules, I said. But I'm done playing by rules designed to protect men like Victor Harris. We're going to hit him from every direction at once. Legal action, public pressure, and proof of murder. We're going to destroy his name so completely that no judge will dare rule in his favor. That's dangerous. That makes us dangerous too, I finished. Let him be afraid for once. Let him feel what Sarah felt, what you felt, what Daniel feels every day in that house. I hung up and stared at the dark highway ahead. Somewhere in Riverside, Victor Harris sat in his mansion, sure of his power, certain he'd gotten rid of every threat to his control. He'd killed his wife and daughter, stolen his grandson's true father, destroyed David's job, and scared anyone who dared question him. But he'd made one big mistake. He'd thought that threats and fear would be enough to stop an old woman from fighting for her family. He was about to learn otherwise. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Turn back now or your son will pay the price. This is your final warning. I deleted the message and kept driving. They thought fear would stop me. They thought their threats would work. They'd guessed wrong about how far a grandmother would go to protect her grandson. And that mistake was going to cost Victor Harris everything. The offices of Anderson & White sat on the 12th floor of a glass building in downtown Boston. Monday morning, I sat across from Rebecca Anderson herself, a sharp woman in her 50s with brown hair and a reputation for taking on impossible cases. I'd laid out everything. Sarah's letter, the hair sample, David's testimony, Martha Wells's willingness to testify, and my suspicions about Victor's involvement in 2 murders. Rebecca studied the papers spread across her table, her face unreadable. Finally she looked up. This is strong evidence for a paternity claim. The letter combined with DNA testing would likely show David as Daniel's biological father. However, she paused and I prepared myself. Victor Harris is one of the most powerful men in the state. Fighting him in court will take big resources. My starting fee alone is $40,000, and the case could easily cost $200,000 or more if it goes to trial. The number hit me like cold water. I don't have that kind of money. I figured as much, which is why I'm going to be honest with you, Mrs. Miller. Even with solid proof, custody battles against rich, connected people are brutal. Victor will hire a team of lawyers who will drag this out for years. They'll attack David's character, question his. Get this to David right away, I said. And we need to file for a DNA test before Victor realizes we have the hair. That will take a lawyer, a good one who's not afraid of the Harris name. No. I'd been thinking about this problem since leaving Riverside. There's a firm in Boston, Anderson & White. They work with family law and custody fights. They helped a post office co-worker's son in a hard case last year. I'll call them tonight. Martha walked me to the door as evening shadows grew across the land. Mrs. Miller, be careful. Victor doesn't just destroy jobs and names. People who cross him have accidents, get suddenly sick, disappear. Sarah was his own daughter and he killed her without hesitation. You're a stranger to him, which makes you even less important. I'm also a 70-year-old grandmother, I said. Maybe he'll think I'm not a threat. Don't count on it. Martha waited, then added, there's something else. The day before Sarah died, I heard her on the phone. She was in the garden, thought she was alone. She was talking to someone about papers, something about proof of what he did to Mother and records that can't be changed. She said she'd hidden copies somewhere safe, somewhere Victor would never think to look. I don't know what papers she meant or where she hid them, but if you can find them, they might prove he killed his wife. The pieces were connecting in a scary way. Where would Sarah hide something she didn't want found? The art room, Martha said right away. Her mother's old studio. It's the only place on the property Victor won't enter. He can't handle it. Too many memories, I guess. Even guilt might bother him there. How would I get inside? You can't, not while Victor's alive and watching. She stopped, biting her lip. But there's a groundskeeper, Tom Reed. He's worked on the property for 25 years. He was loyal to Sarah's mother, and he hated seeing what Victor did to Sarah. He has keys to the art room. If you could convince him to help, how do I find him? He lives in a cottage on the property, but he drinks at Riley's Bar in Riverside every Thursday night, 8 o'clock. Regular as a clock. He's in his 50s, gray hair, always wears a Yankees cap. I memorized the details, already planning. It was Sunday evening. I had 4 days to get back to Riverside, call the lawyers, and find Tom Reed before my dinner with David and Emma. The drive back south felt longer than the trip up. Sarah's letter sat in my purse, the words burning through the leather. A young woman trapped and scared, fighting the only way she could. Now, her son was in the hands of her killer, being shaped into something Sarah had died trying to stop. I called David from a rest area. I have proof, I said without waiting. Sarah's letter, a hair sample for DNA testing, and a witness who will say she told her about her father's threats. The relief in his voice was clear. Ma, that's amazing. That's enough to, it's not enough yet, I stopped him. We need the papers. Sarah hid proof about Victor killing his wife. That's what will destroy him completely, what will make sure he can never threaten us or Daniel again. How do we get papers from inside the property? I'm working on that. But David, there's something you need to know. Sarah wrote that letter knowing she was going to die. She believed her father would kill her if she tried to take Daniel and run. She was right. The silence on the other end went on too long. Finally, David said, his voice thick with feeling, I could have saved her if I'd fought harder 8 years ago. If I'd refused to let Victor scare me, then you'd probably be dead too, I said bluntly. Victor Harris gets rid of threats. You staying alive, staying free, that was Sarah's choice. She wanted you safe so you could eventually fight for Daniel. Don't dishonor what she did by drowning in guilt. Honor it by winning. Ma, when did you become so what? So fierce? I smiled, though it wasn't happy, at my reflection in the window. When someone threatened my family. Now listen carefully. Tomorrow morning I'm meeting with Anderson and White in Boston. I need you to get me every paper you have showing your relationship with Sarah. Emails, photos, receipts from your Westfield meetings, anything. I also need you to write a detailed statement about your relationship timeline, including the hotel where you met again. Can you do that without Emma knowing? I'll figure it out. But Ma, even with Sarah's letter and the DNA proof, Victor will fight this with everything he has. The custody battle could take years. Only if we play by normal rules, I said. But I'm done playing by rules designed to protect men like Victor Harris. We're going to hit him from every direction at once. Legal action, public pressure, and proof of murder. We're going to destroy his name so completely that no judge will dare rule in his favor. That's dangerous. That makes us dangerous too, I finished. But let him be afraid for once. Let him feel what Sarah felt, what you felt, what Daniel feels every day in that house. I hung up and stared at the dark highway ahead. Somewhere in Riverside, Victor Harris sat in his mansion, sure of his power, certain he'd gotten rid of every threat to his control. He'd killed his wife and daughter, stolen his grandson's true father, destroyed David's job, and scared anyone who dared question him. But he'd made one big mistake. He'd thought that threats and fear would be enough to stop an old woman from fighting for her family. He was about to learn otherwise. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Turn back now or your son will pay the price. This is your final warning. I deleted the message and kept driving. They thought fear would stop me. They thought their threats would work. They'd guessed wrong about how far a grandmother would go to protect her grandson. And that mistake was going to cost Victor Harris everything. The offices of Anderson and White sat on the 12th floor of a glass building in downtown Boston. Monday morning, I sat across from Rebecca Anderson herself, a sharp woman in her 50s with brown hair and a reputation for taking on impossible cases. I'd laid out everything. Sarah's letter, the hair sample, David's testimony, Martha Wells's willingness to testify, and my suspicions about Victor's involvement in 2 murders. Rebecca studied the papers spread across her table, her face unreadable. Finally she looked up. This is strong evidence for a paternity claim. The letter combined with DNA testing would likely show David as Daniel's biological father. However, she paused and I prepared myself. Victor Harris is one of the most powerful men in the state. Fighting him in court will take big resources. My starting fee alone is $40,000, and the case could easily cost $200,000 or more if it goes to trial. The number hit me like cold water. I don't have that kind of money. I figured as much, which is why I'm going to be honest with you, Mrs. Miller. Even with solid proof, custody battles against rich, connected people are brutal. Victor will hire a team of lawyers who will drag this out for years. They'll attack David's character, question his stability, paint him as a bad father who left his child. They'll use his marriage to Emma against him, say he's hiding a secret child from his wife, suggesting he's dishonest and unstable. And Victor has the money to keep Daniel tied up in legal limbo until he's 18. So you're saying we can't win? I'm saying winning takes more than just being right. Takes leverage. Rebecca leaned forward, her voice dropping. You mentioned papers Sarah supposedly hid. Proof about Victor killing his wife. If those papers exist and you can get them, that changes everything. That's not just custody proof. That's criminal proof. That's leverage powerful enough to force Victor to negotiate. But getting them means breaking into the Harris property, which I cannot and will not tell you to do, Rebecca said carefully. However, if such papers were to mysteriously appear, if they were to be checked and turned over to right authorities, Victor would be facing charges for murder. In that case, a custody judge would be very unlikely to give custody to a man being investigated for crime. Daniel would likely be placed with next of kin, which would be David. I understood what she wasn't saying directly. How long do I have before you need an answer about working with us? Take the weekend. But Mrs. Miller, understand what you're thinking about. Breaking into private property is a serious crime. If you're caught, you could go to jail. And if Victor realizes what you're trying before you succeed, he won't call the police. He'll handle it his way. Sarah's car crash won't be the last unfortunate accident. As I left her office, my phone rang. David's name showed on the screen. Ma, where are you? Boston. I just met with a lawyer. You need to come home right now. His voice was tight with panic. Emma knows something's wrong. She showed up at my work an hour ago, demanding to know why I've been so distant. I tried to put her off, but she found the timeline I wrote for you. I'd left it on my home desk. I thought she was working late, but she came home early and saw it. My stomach dropped. What exactly did the timeline say? Everything. Sarah's name, the dates we were together, the hotel where we met again, the fact that I believed Daniel was my son. Ma, Emma thinks I've been having an affair for years. She thinks Daniel is from me cheating on her. She's angry and heartbroken, and she's threatening to file for divorce. This was the problem I'd feared, the complication that could break everything. Where is she now? At her sister's house. She won't answer my calls. Her sister called me a liar and a cheater and said Emma deserves better. If she files for divorce, Victor's lawyers will use it against me. They'll say I'm unstable, that my marriage is falling apart, that I'm an unreliable father. Then we need to talk to Emma before she does something she can't take back. We need to tell her the complete truth. She won't listen to me. But Ma, she might listen to you. She respects you. If you could explain, I'll be there in 2 hours. I was already heading for my car. Text me her sister's address. David, prepare yourself. Once we tell Emma everything, there's no going back. She'll either stand with us or against us. And if it's against us, this gets much harder. The drive back to Riverside felt endless. I used the time to practice what I'd say to Emma, how I'd explain David's choices in a way that wouldn't sound like excuses. But the truth was messy and complicated, full of compromises and secrets that couldn't be easily explained. Emma's sister, Carol, answered the door with a face like stone. Barbara, suppose David sent you to make excuses for him. I came to explain what Carol doesn't understand yet, I said calmly. May I speak with Emma? I don't think Mom let her in. Emma appeared behind her sister, her eyes red and puffy from crying. She looked exhausted, betrayed, and angry all at once. I want to hear what possible explanation there could be for my husband having a secret child he's been obsessing over for months while lying to my face. We sat in Carol's formal living room, the air thick with tension. Emma held a crumpled tissue, her wedding ring catching the light as her hands twisted in her lap. I took a deep breath and began. I told her everything. About Sarah and David's relationship 8 years ago. About Victor Harris keeping them apart through threats and fear. About Sarah's forced marriage to James Cooper. About David finding out about Daniel only after Sarah was already married and pregnant. About the threats that had destroyed David's job and kept him away. About Sarah's death and the proof, suggesting murder. Emma listened in silence, her face changing from anger to shock to horror as the story came out. When I finished, she sat frozen for a long moment. "You're telling me," she said slowly, "that David has been secretly mourning a dead woman and crying over a son he can't claim, and he never thought to tell me, his wife?" "He was trying to protect you," I said. "Victor Harris threatened to destroy everyone David cared about. By keeping you in the dark, David thought he was keeping you safe." "Safe from what?" "From the truth. From having a choice about whether I wanted to be married to a man with a secret child." Emma's voice rose. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? Finding out my husband has been visiting another woman's grave. That he has a son with someone else. That our entire marriage has been built on lies." "Not lies," I said. "Painful omissions made under pressure. That's a fancy way of saying lies." Emma stood suddenly, walking to the window. "And now what? You want me to accept this? To help David fight? For custody of a child that isn't mine? To go up against some powerful family and risk everything we've built? I want you to understand that David loves you," I said quietly. "But he also loves his son. Those two things don't cancel each other out. Don't they?" Emma turned around, tears running down her face. "'Cause it feels like I've been competing with a ghost for 3 years. It feels like I was never really his first choice. Just the safe option after Sarah was out of reach. Tell me I'm wrong, Barbara. Tell me David married me because he loved me, not because he was trying to forget someone else. Couldn't." The truth was on my face and Emma saw it. She made a sound halfway between a laugh and a cry. "That's what I thought." "Emma, please," I said. "David needs you right now. Daniel needs you. That little boy is being raised by people who killed his mother. He deserves to know his real father, to be safe and loved. Regardless of how David's relationship with you started, you can choose now to be part of something important. You can help, save a child. Or I can walk away from this mess and save myself." Emma grabbed her purse from the couch. "I need time to think. I need time to figure out if I can forgive David for this, if I can live with being second choice, if I can accept a stepson who will always remind me that my husband loved someone else first and more deeply." "If you walk away now," Carol said coldly, "you're giving up on your marriage without fighting for it. Is that the woman you want to be? Is it wrong to want a husband who's honest with me?" Emma shut. "Is it wrong to want to be someone's first priority for once?" She looked at me, her face hardening. "I won't stand in David's way. I won't hurt his custody case. But I won't help either. I need distance from this, from him, from all of you." She left, the front door closing with quiet finality. Carol stood slowly, her mouth tight. "You've ruined my sister's life." "Victor Harris ruined this," I corrected. "We're just trying to fix it. By destroying my sister's marriage in the process." Carol walked to the door, holding it. "Get out of my house, Barbara. And tell your son that Emma will be staying here until she decides what to do. If he tries to contact her before she's ready, I'll make sure she files for divorce right away and speaks against him in any custody hearing. Are we clear?" Crystal clear. We'd lost a possible ally and gained an active problem. Emma's testimony about David's secrecy and emotional distance could hurt our custody case. And if she filed for divorce, it would paint David as unstable and dishonest. Exactly the story Victor's lawyers would use. "Call David from my car. She needs time. We have to give it to her." "Ma, we don't have time. Tomorrow night is dinner and now Emma won't be there. That's going to raise questions with everyone else. And without Emma's support, the lawyers will have to work harder." I stopped him. "We'll figure this out. Right now I need you to focus on something else. Tomorrow is Thursday. Tom Reed drinks at Riley's bar at 8 o'clock. I'm going to talk to him about getting into the art room. Breaking and entering. That's illegal. So is murder. But Victor Harris doesn't seem concerned with what's legal. I took a breath, steadying myself. David, listen to me. We're past the point of playing it safe. We have proof for paternity. But Rebecca Anderson says it's not enough to guarantee victory against Victor's resources. We need the papers Sarah hid. We need proof of murder that's so strong Victor can't escape it. That means taking risks. What if you get caught? Then I get caught. But I'm an old woman who can claim. Confusion, memory problems, whatever story works. They won't throw me in prison. The worst that happens is I'm walked off the property and told not to come back. But if I succeed, if I find those papers, Victor loses everything. And if something worse happens, if Victor decides you're too much of a threat. The question hung in the air between us. I thought of Sarah, her car on that dark road. I thought of Sarah's mother, dead from impossibly fast cancer. I thought of the threatening notes, the break-ins, the watching. Then you'll finish this without me, I said quietly. You'll take what we've gathered to the authorities. You'll fight for Daniel no matter what it costs. You'll be the father Sarah knew you could be. Promise me, David. His voice was thick with feeling. Promise. But please, Ma, be careful. Always. I hung up and stared at the steering wheel, my hands shaking slightly. For the first time since finding David at the cemetery, real fear crept through my determination. Victor Harris was a killer. He'd gotten rid of his wife and daughter without hesitation. What would he do to a meddling grandmother who threatened to expose him? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I opened it. The message had a single photo. My house taken from across the street. My car in the driveway. My front door clearly visible. No words, just the picture. The meaning was clear. We know where you live. We can reach you anytime. Second text came. Last chance. Walk away or face the results. I stared at the photo, my heart pounding. They were getting more aggressive, moving from vague threats to direct intimidation. This was the moment where a reasonable person would go to the police, would step back and let authorities handle it. But authorities hadn't helped Sarah. They'd written her death off as an accident, ignored proof, accepted Victor's story. The police chief played golf with Victor every week. The medical examiner's office was funded by Harris money. There was no help coming. There was only me, David. And whatever courage we could find. Texted back. Wrong answer. See you soon. Then I blocked the number and drove home. Tomorrow night, Tom Reed would either help me get into the art room or I'd find another way. But one way or another I was getting those papers. Victor Harris had spent decades building his fortress of power. Sure, no one would dare challenge him. He was about to learn that the most dangerous opponent isn't always the strongest or the richest or the most connected. Sometimes it's the one with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. And I was exactly that person. Riley's bar was exactly the kind of working man's place I'd expected. Dark wood, older people, a jukebox playing old songs. Thursday night at 8 o'clock, I spotted Tom Reed right away. Gray hair, Yankees cap, sitting alone at the end of the bar drinking a beer. I took the seat next to him and ordered water. Reed. Kept my voice low. He turned slowly, his weathered face tired. Do I know you? No, but I knew Sarah Cooper, or rather, Sarah Harris. I saw recognition flash in his eyes. My name is Barbara Miller. I'm the grandmother of Sarah's son, Daniel. His hand tightened around his beer glass. You should leave. Not until you hear me out. I pulled out my phone, showing him the photo of Sarah holding newborn Daniel with David beside her. My son is Daniel's biological father. Victor Harris stole that child from him just like he stole Sarah's life. Tom studied the photo, his jaw working. Finally he said, I can't help you. Victor pays my salary, gives me my cottage. I'm 2 years from retirement. I can't risk Sarah is dead because of Victor Harris. I cut him off. And before she died, she hid papers proving he killed his wife. Those papers are in the art room in her mother's studio. I need to get into that building. Then you're asking me to commit career suicide. I'm asking you to help me save a 7-year-old boy from being raised by his mother's killer. I leaned closer. You knew Sarah's mother, didn't you? Martha Wells said you'd worked on the property for 25 years. You were there when Anna Harris got sick. Something changed in his face. Pain, old guilt, something buried deep. Anna was a good woman, kind. She treated the workers like people, not servants. When she got sick, he trailed off, staring into his beer. What happened, Tom? She was fine one day, dying the next. Stage 4 cancer, they said. But I saw Victor the week before the diagnosis. He was meeting with a doctor late at night in his office. Not Anna's regular doctor, some specialist from out of state. They were talking about amounts and undetectable ways and terminal presentation. I thought maybe Anna was already sick, that Victor was getting another opinion. But then he stopped, his voice rough. Then she died exactly as they discussed. The doctor left the country 3 days after Anna's funeral, moved to Europe. I looked him up years later. He'd been banned from practicing medicine for experimental treatments that killed patients. But by then it was too late. Anna was. Sarah was trapped with that monster. And I'd said nothing because I was a coward who valued his job more than the truth. The confession hung between us, heavy with regret. You can't change the past, I said gently. But you can help save Sarah's son. Help me get into that art room. Tom was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a key ring, sliding a single brass key across the bar. The art room. Victor never goes there. But James Cooper walks the grounds sometimes, especially at night. If you're going to do this, do it tomorrow morning. Victor's flying to Chicago for a board meeting at 9 o'clock. James takes Daniel to baseball practice at 8:30. The property will be mostly empty between 9 and 11. Will security be a problem? Gate codes change every week. Tomorrow's code is 73926. Cameras cover the main house and gate, but the art room is in a blind spot. Victor never bothered securing it because he never goes near it. Park on the service road behind the property. Come in through the back garden gate. No camera there. The key works for both the garden gate and the art room door. I closed my hand around the key, feeling its weight. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. If Victor finds out I helped you, I'm finished. And Mrs. Miller, his eyes met mine, haunted. Be careful what you find in there. Sarah's mother kept diaries. If they're still there, if Sarah left them for someone to find, the truth is going to be uglier than you imagine. I left the bar with the key, burning in my pocket, and drove home through streets that suddenly felt full of watching eyes. My house was dark, exactly as I'd left it. I checked every room, every window lock, every door. Nothing disturbed, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. At midnight I called David. I have access to the art room tomorrow morning between 9 and 11. Ma, please let me come with you. Well, if we're both caught, Daniel loses both his father and grandmother. You need to stay visible. Keep your alibi. Go to work. A scene. Make sure there's no question about where you were. Pause. And David, if something happens to me tomorrow, everything I've gathered is in a safe deposit box at Riverside Savings Bank. Box 134. The key is taped under the false bottom of my jewelry box. Rebecca Anderson has instructions to get it if I don't check in by tomorrow evening. You planned for this. His voice was a mix of fear and wonder. Course I did. Did you think I was walking into this blindly? I smiled despite the tension. I'm a post office worker, David. We plan, we organize, we prepare for every possibility. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow we either win or we lose. But either way, this ends. The next morning came gray and cold. I dressed in dark, practical clothes. Black pants, navy jacket, comfortable shoes, no jewelry, no bright colors, nothing anyone would remember. I looked like any older woman running errands. The drive to the Harris property took 20 minutes. The land spread across 40 acres of perfect grounds, the main house a huge mansion visible from the road. I drove past the main entrance, continuing to the service road Tom had mentioned. At 9:05, I parked my car behind a group of trees and walked toward the back garden gate. Code worked. The gate opened quietly and I slipped onto the property, my heart hammering. The art room was maybe 70 yards away, partially hidden by decorative bushes. I walked quickly but calmly, knowing that fast movement attracted attention. The key turned smoothly in the lock. Inside, the art room was dim, dust floating in light from high windows. The space had been turned into an artist's studio. Paintings stacked against walls, an easel near the window, shelves full of supplies, everything covered in years of dust. I began searching carefully. Drawers, cabinets, storage boxes. Nothing. 30 minutes passed. I was starting to think Sarah had removed whatever she'd hidden when my hand touched a loose floorboard under the old rug beneath the easel. The board lifted easily, showing a shallow space below. Inside, 4 leather diaries, a manila envelope, and a small metal box. I opened the first diary. Anna Harris's beautiful handwriting filled the pages. Victor grows more controlling each day. He's had my lawyer followed, my bank accounts watched. He told me yesterday that if I go through with the divorce, I'll never see Sarah again. He has judges. He says he can prove I'm unfit. He can make me disappear if needed. The entries got more desperate, more frightened. I've been feeling sick. Dizzy, sick to my stomach, weak. Victor says it's stress, but I've never felt like this. He brings me tea every night now. Stays to make sure I drink it. There's a bitter taste I can't place. The final entry, dated 4 days before her death. I'm dying. I know it now. Victor has poisoned me slowly and carefully. Sarah suspects but can't prove it. I've hidden copies of my medical records from before the cancer diagnosis. All healthy. I've hidden proof of Victor's threats, recordings of his conversations about getting rid of obstacles. I've put everything here in my studio where he'll never look. Someday Sarah will be brave enough to use this. Someday she'll escape him. If you're reading this, please help her. Please save my daughter from the monster I married. Tears made my vision blurry. The manila envelope had medical records, financial papers showing payments to the band Dr. Tom had mentioned, and a USB drive labeled insurance. The metal box held a small recorder and 4 cassette tapes, each labeled with dates. From 27 years ago. I put everything in my jacket, my hands shaking. That's when I heard the door open behind me. Turned slowly. James Cooper stood in the doorway, his face cold. Tom called to warn me someone might try this. He's loyal to Victor, not to your feelings, Mrs. Miller. Did you really think a key and a code would be given without Victor knowing? My blood turned to ice. Tom had betrayed me. This was a trap. Step away from the diaries, James said, moving closer. Everything you found goes back in that hiding spot. Then we're going to have a talk about how dangerous it is to threaten the Harris family. But I was already moving, shoving the diaries and envelope deeper into my jacket, backing toward the rear window I'd noticed earlier. You can't stop this, James. I've already made copies. I've already given proof to lawyers. If anything happens to me, it all goes public. You're lying. But there was doubt in his voice. Am I? Esme. Hurt me and find out what happens when a grandmother disappears after looking into her grandson's guardian. Find out how much attention falls on Victor Harris when I've already filed early papers with family court, when I've already given statements to lawyers, when I've already written everything down for the police. I reached the window, opened it. I'm not Sarah, James. I'm not young or alone or frightened. I'm a 70-year-old woman with nothing to lose and everything written down. Victor will destroy you. Victor is finished. I climbed through the window, dropping into the garden outside. Barbara Miller says hello. Tell him his daughter left receipts for everything he did. And tell him I'm coming for my grandson. I ran through the gardens, expecting people chasing me, expecting guards, expecting something. But there was nothing. I reached my car, started it, and drove away from the property, checking my mirror constantly. Only when I was 6 miles away did I pull over, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the wheel. Done it. I had the proof. Anna Harris's diaries, medical Records, financial papers, recordings. Call David. Have everything. Meet me at the lawyer's office in Boston now. Ma, are you okay? You sound I'm fine. Just hurry. But I wasn't fine. As I pulled back onto the road, I saw a black car in my mirror, following, keeping distance, but clearly there. They were following me to see where I'd go, what I'd do with the proof. And I was leading them straight to Rebecca Anderson's office, possibly putting the lawyer in danger. I made a quick decision and turned off at the next exit, heading instead toward the Riverside police station. If Victor's people wanted to threaten me, they could do it in front of witnesses. The black car followed for 3 more blocks, then suddenly turned away, disappearing into traffic. They'd gotten their answer. I wasn't going to be scared. I was going public. I parked outside the police station and made a call. Not to David, but to someone else entirely. Someone I'd been keeping ready for exactly this moment. Detective Martinez, this is Barbara Miller. We spoke 4 days ago when I filed my early report about threats. I'm ready to hand over the proof I mentioned, all of it, including proof of 2 murders committed by Victor Harris. Because yes, I'd already filed a report with a state detective working on corruption cases. And yes, I'd already set up a trail of proof with authorities Victor didn't control. And yes, I'd been 3 steps ahead this entire time, building a case piece by piece while Victor's people threatened and followed and thought they were scaring a naive old woman. That was my surprise. That was my preparation. I'd never been stumbling blindly into danger. I'd been gathering proof, making paper trails, and making sure that even if something happened to me, Victor Harris would still fall. Sometimes the best weapon isn't strength or money or connections. Sometimes it's patience, planning, and being underestimated. And Victor Harris had definitely underestimated me. Detective Carlos Martinez met me in the lobby of the Riverside police station. His face carefully blank. He was with the Massachusetts State Police Crime Investigation Unit, assigned to corruption cases involving high-profile people. I'd found him 4 days ago through careful research. A detective with a reputation for being honest, whose own brother had been destroyed by a rich businessman who'd manipulated the legal system. He understood what it meant to fight power with limited resources. Mrs. Miller, he shook my hand firmly. Let's talk somewhere private. We moved to a small meeting room away from the main station. I spread Anna Harris's diaries, the medical records, the financial papers, and the USB drive across the table. Everything you need to prove Victor Harris killed his wife 27 years ago, and everything you need to question how his daughter died 8 months ago. Detective Martinez pulled on plastic gloves and began looking at the papers, his face getting darker with each page. He read Anna's diary entries out loud, his voice tight. Victor brings me tea every night now. Stays to make. Sure, I drink it. There's a bitter taste I can't place. He looked up. This is proof of planned murder, combined with the financial records showing payments to Dr. Gerald Norton, the doctor who was later banned from medicine for experimental treatments that killed patients, the same doctor who diagnosed Anna with terminal cancer that appeared overnight. I pointed to another paper. And this USB drive has recordings Anna made of Victor's threats about the divorce. His exact words. You'll never take Sarah from me. Bury you first and no one will question it. Martinez plugged the USB drive into his laptop. Victor Harris's voice filled the small room, cold and threatening, making threats that were clear in their meaning. When the recordings finished, Martinez sat back, his jaw tight. This is major proof. Why didn't you come forward with this right away when you found it? Because I needed to make sure it couldn't be hidden or disappeared, I said. I've made 4 copies. One is with my lawyer Rebecca Anderson of Anderson & White. In Boston. One is in a safe deposit box at Riverside Savings Bank. One is with a journalist at the Boston Times who works on investigations of wealthy families. And one is with a trusted friend out of state. If anything happens to me or if this proof mysteriously vanishes from police keeping, all 4 copies go public at the same time. A slight smile crossed Martinez's face. You've thought this through. I'm a post office worker. We're trained to keep information and make backups. I pulled out another folder. Falso. Written down every threat I've gotten over the past week, including photos of people watching outside my home, anonymous notes telling me to stop looking, and testimony from Martha Wells, Sarah Cooper's former babysitter, about what happened before Sarah's death. You believe Victor Harris killed his daughter too? I believe Sarah threatened to leave her husband and expose the truth about her son's real father. I believe Victor saw her as a threat to his control, just like he saw his wife as a threat. And I believe that car crash wasn't an accident. I leaned forward. Detective Martinez, I'm not asking you to take my word for it. I'm asking you to reopen the investigation into Sarah's death with this new information. Look at the medical reports again. Question whether those sleeping pills were really self-given. Talk to the witnesses. Victor's money may have silenced people the first time. Martinez was quiet for a long moment, studying the proof spread before him. Finally he said, I'll need to involve the district attorney's office. Eighth, this high profile against someone with Victor Harris's money needs major preparation. We'll need to check that these papers are real, get expert testimony about the recordings, possibly dig up Anna Harris's body for a new medical exam. How long will that take? Months possibly. Building a murder case against someone who did the crime 27 years ago isn't quick or easy. And Victor will hire the best defense lawyers money can buy. But you'll go after it, Mrs. Miller, if this proof is real and early. Examination suggests it is. Then Victor Harris is a serial killer who's been protected by wealth and influence for decades. Yes, I'll go after it. I'll go after it until he's in prison or I've used every legal option. His eyes met mine. But I need to warn you, this will get ugly. Victor will attack your believability, your son's character, your family's reputation. He'll say you made up proof, that you're a mean woman trying to steal his grandson. The media will be brutal. Let them come, I said calmly. The truth is the truth. No matter how many lawyers try to hide it. We spent the next 3 hours going through every detail, with Martinez photographing papers and recording my statement. When we finished, it was past 3 o'clock. My phone showed 19 missed calls from David. I called him back from the parking lot. Done. The state police have everything. Ma, thank God. I've been terrified. Emma called me an hour ago. Victor Harris showed up at her sister's house. He tried to talk to her, said he wanted to clear up misunderstandings about the family situation. Carol threw him out, but he left his card and said Emma should call him if she wanted to know the real truth about David. Chill ran through me. Victor was already moving, already trying to turn Emma into a weapon against us. What did Emma say? She called me to warn me. She said she's still angry, still processing everything, but she doesn't trust Victor. She said any man who shows up uninvited at someone's home to manipulate a marriage situation is creepy and controlling. Her words, not mine. Small victory. Emma wasn't on our side yet, but she wasn't on Victor's either. That's something. What about Daniel? Have you had any contact? No, but James Cooper called my work this morning. He said Victor wants to arrange a meeting, neutral ground, both families present to discuss the situation like civilized people. He suggested next Thursday at the Harris property. Absolutely not, I said right away. That's Victor's territory. He controls everything there. If we meet him, it's in public with witnesses, with our lawyer present. Rebecca Anderson agreed to work with us, David said. I called her this morning and told her we'd found the proof you went after. She said she'd take the case for whatever we could afford, that bringing down Victor Harris was worth more than money. She's writing a petition for paternity testing and filing it with family court on Monday. Things were moving fast now, pieces falling into place, but we were still in danger. Victor knew we had proof. Knew we'd gone to the police. He was cornered, and cornered animals were the most dangerous. David, listen carefully. For the next few weeks, you don't go anywhere alone. You change your routes to work. You put security cameras at your apartment. You write down everything. Every phone call, every meeting, every threat. Understand? You think he'll come after me? I think he'll try to scare you into dropping the paternity claim. And if scaring doesn't work, I didn't finish. We both knew what Victor was capable of. At evening, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of tea. Sarah's letter spread on the table before me. "I hope you're at peace now," I whispered to the empty room. "I hope you know we're fighting for Daniel, that we're not letting your father win." My doorbell rang at 6:30. Through the little window, I saw Emma standing on my porch alone. I opened the door carefully. "May I come in?" Her voice was quiet, none of the anger from our last meeting. I stepped aside and she entered, looking around my small house like she was seeing it for the first time. We'd had dinners here, holiday gatherings, but she'd never really looked before. Now she studied the photos on the walls. David as a child, Michael and me on our wedding day. Family moments covering decades. "I've been thinking," Emma said finally, sitting on my couch, "about everything you told me about Sarah and Victor and David's choices. And I realized something. I've been making this about me, about my hurt feelings, my sense of betrayal. But there's a 7-year-old boy whose mother is dead and whose real father can't claim him because of a rich man's threats and control." "Emma, let me finish." She held up a hand. "I'm still angry at David. I'm still hurt that he kept this secret. Our marriage has problems we need to work through, and I don't know if we'll make it. But that's separate from what's right for Daniel. That little boy deserves to know his real father. He deserves to be safe from Victor Harris. And if I can help make that happen, I should." Relief flooded through me. "What changed?" "Your mind. Victor showed up at my sister's house." Her voice got hard. "He was smooth, charming, full of concern for my difficult situation. He said David was unstable, that he'd been stalking the Cooper family, that his paternity claims were delusions. He offered to pay for marriage counseling, even suggested he could help David get the mental help he clearly needs. The whole time he was smiling, but his eyes," she shuddered. "His eyes were cold, empty. I've never met someone who felt so deeply wrong." "That's because he's a killer," I said quietly. "He killed his wife and daughter, and he'll kill anyone else who threatens his control." "Believe you." Emma looked at me directly. "So what do you need from me?" "Testimony that David is stable, employed, capable of being a father. Character witness statements, support during the custody hearing when it comes. And most importantly, stand beside him so the judge sees a complete family unit, not a man in a failing marriage." "Can do that." He paused. "Barbara, I need you to understand something. I'm doing this because it's right, not because David and I are fixed. We have serious problems, trust issues, communication issues. The foundation of our marriage was built on him trying to forget someone else, and that's not healthy for either of us. But you'll try. I'll try for now. We'll see where it goes." She stood, preparing to leave. "When's the court date?" "We don't have one yet. Rebecca Anderson is filing the paternity petition Monday. After that, it could be weeks or months before hearing. Victor will fight every step, file delays, try to drag it out. Then we'll be patient." Emma moved toward the door, then turned back. "One more thing. That letter Sarah wrote, the one David showed me, she loved him very much. Part of me resents competing with a ghost. But another part understands that real love doesn't just vanish because it's inconvenient or complicated. I hope someday David can love me that completely. But if he can't, I hope he can at least be honest about it." After she left, I sat in the growing darkness, thinking about love and sacrifice and the complicated ways people hurt each other while trying to do what's right. Sarah had loved David enough to let him go. David had loved her enough to stay away when she asked. Emma was learning to love them both enough to help save Daniel despite her own pain. And I loved my family enough to risk everything to protect them. The next weeks moved with slow speed that hid the intensity of the conflict. Rebecca Anderson filed the paternity petition and Victor's lawyers immediately filed papers to dismiss. Detective Martinez opened formal investigations into both Anna's and Sarah's deaths. The medical examiner's office agreed to dig up Anna's remains for new testing. Media caught wind of the story. Harris family faces murder investigation ran in the Boston Times. Prominent businessman accused in wife's death followed in regional papers. Public opinion began shifting as details came out. The suspicious timing of Anna's cancer, the payments to a banned doctor, the recordings of Victor's threats. Victor's lawyers put out statements calling it a witch hunt and a clear attempt to steal a child through false accusations. But the proof was too strong to dismiss, and Victor's reputation, once untouchable, began to crack. 3 months after I'd gotten those diaries from the art room, Victor Harris was formally charged with the murder of Anna Harris. The proof was overwhelming. The recordings, the financial trails, the diary entries, expert testimony about poisoning, methods. His lawyers arranged bail, $4 million, but the damage was done. His board positions disappeared overnight. Business partners distanced themselves. The Harris name, once the same as power and respectability, became connected with murder and corruption. The paternity test came back definite. David was Daniel's biological father with 99.96% certainty. 4 months after that, in a courtroom packed with journalists and observers, a judge ruled that custody of Daniel Cooper Harris should be moved to his biological father, David Miller, while Victor Harris's criminal trial was pending. James Cooper, who'd been part of the deception but not the murders, didn't fight the ruling. He'd already filed for legal separation from the Harris family, trying to save what remained of his reputation. I watched from the seats as David met his son for the first time in an official way. A supervised visit in the courthouse with a social worker present and cameras rolling. Daniel was quiet, confused, uncertain about this stranger who claimed to be his father. But when David showed him the photo of Sarah holding him as a newborn, something in the little boy's eyes changed. "That's my mama," Daniel said softly. "Yes," David replied, his voice thick with feeling. "And she loved you more than anything in the world." "I loved her too. And I love you, Daniel. I know this is confusing and scary, but I promise I'll never let anyone hurt you again." It wasn't a dramatic reunion with instant connection. It was awkward and careful, full of questions and uncertainty. But it was real. It was a beginning. 7 months later, Victor Harris was found guilty of first-degree murder in the death of Anna Harris. He was sentenced to life in prison without the chance of parole. The investigation into Sarah's death stayed open, with prosecutors building a case, but the proof was more circumstantial there. It didn't matter. Victor was finished. I stood at Sarah's grave on a cool spring morning, placing fresh flowers beside her stone. David stood next to me, holding Daniel's hand. Emma stood slightly apart, her relationship with David still uncertain but slowly healing. She'd moved back in with him and they were in counseling, working through the layers of dishonesty and hurt. "Tell Mama okay," Daniel said, staring at the grave with the serious intensity of an 8-year-old trying to understand death. "She knows," David said gently. "She's watching over you, proud of how brave you've been." We walked back to the parking lot together, an imperfect family, bound by trauma and love and determination. Daniel would need therapy to process everything. David and Emma would need years to rebuild trust. I would need time to recover from the months of stress and fear. But we'd won. Not perfectly, not cleanly, but completely. Victor Harris had spent decades building an empire of power through fear and murder. He'd believed himself untouchable, believed that money and influence could erase any crime. He'd been wrong. Because sometimes justice comes not from the powerful or the wealthy or the connected, but from ordinary people who refused to be scared, from a son who cried in secret, from a grandmother who wouldn't accept that her grandson was beyond reach, from a daughter-in-law who chose what was right over what was easy. As I drove home that afternoon, past the cemetery where this had all begun, I thought about the woman I'd been 7 months ago. Careful, quiet, polite to a fault. That woman still existed. But she'd been joined by someone stronger, someone who'd learned that sometimes kindness requires fierceness, that sometimes protecting family means fighting battles you never imagined you'd face. My small house on Pine Street welcomed me back, unchanged except for the security system I'd put in. Inside, on my kitchen table, sat a framed photo. David holding Daniel. both smiling carefully at the camera. Emma had taken it last week during a family dinner, the first truly happy moment in their painful journey toward becoming a family. Beside it sat Sarah's letter, kept in a glass frame. Someday, when Daniel was older, he'd read his mother's words and understand the sacrifice she'd made, the love that had driven every impossible choice. And he'd know that his grandmother had fought for him, that his father had never stopped loving him, that family meant never giving up, no matter how powerful the enemy or how impossible the odds. The evening sun came through my yellow curtains, warming the kitchen where I'd planned this entire campaign, Michael's aunt's handiwork. 35 years old, still beautiful. Some things lasted, some things were worth fighting for, and some battles against all odds were worth winning. I made myself tea and opened a new book, content in the knowledge that Daniel was safe, that justice had won, and that sometimes the most dangerous opponent really is the one with nothing to lose and everything to fight for. Victor Harris had learned that lesson too late. And I had learned that age wasn't weakness. It was wisdom, patience, and the built-up strength of a lifetime of love. That was enough. That was everything. Now tell me, what would you have done if you were in my place? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching Granny's Voice, and don't forget to check out the video on your screen right now. I'm sure it will surprise you.